Hello and welcome to the Weight Free Wellness Podcast. I'm Tara Bachland, your hostess and the creator of the Weight Free Wellness Podcast, and also the author of Universal Self-Care, Improved Health Through Self-Understanding. And I'm delighted to have our guest, Tanaaz Chubb, back on the podcast. And you're probably like, I haven't heard of her before. How is she back on the podcast? Well, the last podcast we recorded in basically entirety, and I had forgot to actually press record. So I am so delighted that Tanaaz is back, and got to know her quite well in the last chat, which was really fun. But I'll introduce her to you. Tanaaz is the co-creator and owner of Forever Conscious. Growing up in Melbourne, Australia, Tanaaz moved to Los Angeles after winning a green card in the lottery. She arrived in LA eager to pursue work in the entertainment industry. However, it seemed that the universe had other plans for her. Tanaaz always had a passion for writing, so she started writing content and blogs for clients and professional companies. While this helped her to pay the bills, Tanaaz felt a stronger and deeper calling to turn her attention to the world of all things metaphysical. Tanaaz had been doing intuitive readings for family, friends, and friends of friends for ages, but she had never really considered doing it professionally before. Feeling bored with her job as a content writer, Tanaaz had the inspiration one day to create Forever Conscious, which would use her writing and blogging talents as well as her passion for all things spiritual and metaphysical. And I'll tell you, it's a great site to delve into these topics. A lot of fun, great, easy articles to read. To date, she has done countless readings that have helped to guide and inspire others. She has also written 2 books, Becoming Forever Conscious and Messages for the Soul, and released an e-course, How to Connect with Your Spirit Guides. Her next book, The Power of Positive Energy, is expected to be released in August of 2017. She has also been featured in Elle Magazine Italia and is a contributing writer for the Huffington Post. Tanaaz currently lives in LA with her boyfriend and puppy dog, Kate. Kate! Oh my God. Like the yummy food.
Yes. Yes.
What kind of dog is Cake?
A Maltese poodle.
Oh, cute.
Yeah, he's cute. He's like a little piece of cake.
Cute. So I have to ask, we were just talking about, I'm in Minnesota, you're in LA, and you're saying that LA is going through this cold snap, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some degrees.
Yes, for LA standards, it's cold. It's been rainy, which is not usual for Los Angeles for rain, but we need it. And I guess it's rained so much in the last couple of days that they say at least 40% of the state is now out of drought, which is huge.
That's wonderful.
So, yeah, very good. We needed the rain a lot, so it's been good.
For sure. Well, we're almost to the end of January here. So in Minnesota, we are having balmy weather of 30 degrees. We're on the opposite end of the spectrum. We're expecting snow. And so I have to ask one more thing about LA. Okay, so California, not to LA. So do you see stars and all these goings on all the time, or is that just something that we imagine?
Yeah, you know what? It's just like any other city. You probably, if you didn't know that you were in LA, it's not like there's, movie sets on every corner and famous people every corner stop. So yeah, it's just like a normal city. I mean, look, you do see them, but quite frankly, I am very bad at recognizing people. So usually I don't notice it until I see somebody else whispering or someone else looking and pointing or because they just look like normal people. So it's not like they're, you can't really tell. So yeah.
They don't have little stars glinting around.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, yeah.
Well, I actually live a matter of about 10 minutes away from Prince's studio, where Prince has lived for years and would pass by the memorial basically every day. Now they've converted it into a museum, which I have yet to go to. But that's our one claim to fame in this is Prince. And yeah, he's definitely iconic in many ways.
Yeah, that's cool.
Our little piece of LA or Hollywood in Minnesota.
Yeah.
So you originally came to the U.S. for pursuing to be in the entertainment industry. I'm curious, what aspect of entertainment?
I wanted to be an actor, and I was also very into writing and also working in all aspects of production. So acting was my main thing, but I also wanted to do other stuff, and I did for a little while. But I mean, I was an actor in Australia for, I don't know, maybe like 10 years. Like I did theater and musicals, and then I moved on to film and TV, and I loved it, had a passion for it, always thought that that's what I was put on the earth to do. But then, of course, you know, your plan and life's plan for you doesn't necessarily always match up. So acting was sort of my first job or career path, if you will, that kind of led me to LA and kind of led me to where I am today.
It's interesting how those things that how we, like you said, we think that we're on a certain path, but the universe has another plan.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. I don't want to get too sidetracked on that per se. That's a whole nother topic that we could discuss.
Right.
What piqued my interest when I came across you on the internet was you relate, in one aspect of your writing is you relate the metaphysical to health and healing. Mm-hmm. And that's while Weight-Free Wellness seems like a title that would be solely based on the physical, what vitamins do I take? What diet do I eat? There are many aspects to our health and wellness, which is really a point that I try to convey in Weight-Free Wellness, that kind of like the life mission, the life purpose. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you don't really know actually where the healing is going to happen. It could be with a supplement, or it could be through the metaphysical realm. And we touched on it last time, but would you summarize again for us, like, how did you get into the health and wellness realm to begin with?
Sure. So it started for me after I was diagnosed with PCOS, which stands for Poly-cystic Ovarian Syndrome. And I was about 16 at the time, so I was pretty young. And I, had never had any real health problems before. So going to the doctor, like, there's no cure for this. So it's not life-threatening. All it is you develop cysts on your ovaries, and the cysts are basically like dried eggs that have matured but haven't been released. So I never used to get my periods. I was having lots of symptoms, and so going to the doctor, they discovered this was the reason. And so there's no cure. So their solution is to go on the pill, the contraceptive pill, to try and equalize your hormones. So, not knowing any better, that's what I did. And I just had terrible, terrible side effects with the pill. And every time I tried to talk to the doctor about it, I just felt like I was being shut down, or, they'll go away, they'll subside, keep at it. So I stuck with it. I followed the doctor's advice for 3 or 4 months until I just couldn't take it anymore. And I remember not feeling heard when I went to the doctor and was trying to explain how it was making me feel and how I was having these side effects. And I just got so frustrated and fed up with being ignored. And I could feel that my body was trying to communicate or tell me something. And I just was frustrated that I wasn't being heard and listened to, and kind of brushed off like, a teenager. And so I just stopped. I just stopped taking the medication. I just was like, I'm not doing this anymore. So my mom was like, you got to do something. So we started exploring the idea of natural medicine and acupuncture. But funnily enough, going back just a step, around the same time, my mom's friend was studying to be a naturopath, a holistic medicine doctor, and she was learning iridology. And iridology is like the study of the iris, and it's believed that you can look into the eye. They say the eyes are the window to the soul, right? So you can look into the eye and you can see certain genetic propensities for disease. So she was like, I need to practice. I have my exam coming up. Can I look in your eye? And always being into metaphysical, things like that, I was like, yes, of course, please do it. And when she looked in my eye, she started seeing all this stuff around my ovaries and reproductive area, and she was like spot on about everything. So naturally I was blown away, and, with ditching the, regular doctor and looking for an alternative, this kind of fell into my lap as the perfect solution. So I started seeking out holistic doctors, naturopaths, And I mean, I tried everything. I went from Chinese medicine to Western medicine, and I did everything. And I was the number one thing that was so comforting about these practitioners was their positivity and hope about the condition. It wasn't, oh yeah, here you go, this is incurable, just take this pill and bye, see you later, which is how I really felt from my doctor. These practitioners wanted to really get to know me. They wanted to ask questions about what I was eating and what I was doing. And you just felt good. You felt like somebody really, really cared. So that was sort of my trip down the rabbit hole and getting started with all of the holistic side of healing and the alternative medicines.
So what kind of changes did you end up making? What helped?
So like I was saying again, I tried a whole host of things from Western herbs to Chinese and acupuncture. But I would say the biggest change that happened was probably my diet. And before I was diagnosed, I was eating, like pasta and chicken fingers, like that was my staple. They were like the staples of my diet. And after I started down this natural healing path and really looked at my diet and, it was like, okay, what you eat is really important, because otherwise you don't really think of it, right? If you imagine at 16, you don't really think about what you eat. You just eat it because it tastes good and it's cheap, And then actually developing a relationship with my body and then with food really allowed me to, I feel, heal and move through a lot of the symptoms and also the condition.
You go back to, you talk about being a teenager, and I can still remember being a teenager at certain degrees, but it's like there's a certain point in all of our lives where we realize that diet really does matter. Whether we're dealing with an ailment, a lot of times it's when we're dealing with an ailment, or even striving physically for some kind of athletic something or another, but you almost seem invincible when you're a teenager. And
right.
I think a lot of people ask me, Tara, how did you get into health and wellness? Are you a nutritionist, or, and I didn't honestly go to school for any of this. It was through my own body. I had challenges also, even starting at the age of 9. And so while it felt like a curse, it was actually a blessing in a lot of ways. Because like you said, as a teenager, you just eat what tastes good, what's available. And even at our school, we had big box pizza stores in our cafeteria. We had a taco franchise in our cafeteria, and you could have hamburgers, frozen yogurt, and French fries every day. And there were people who did, but you don't notice that when you're young. So
right.
I kind of consider personally that I was blessed to find that early. And so didn't you, you chose a vegan diet that seemed to help a lot for you, didn't it?
Yeah, vegetarian actually. So yes, I switched to vegetarian, and definitely that had profound effects. Not necessarily, I mean, I never was a huge meat lover. So for me, it was very easy to shift into the vegetarian diet. The biggest thing that I think the vegetarian diet did for me was the vegetables, like introducing vegetables into my diet. I mean, like I was saying before I started this healing journey and really looking at my diet, I think at best I might have been eating like 1 or 2 serves of vegetables a day, but when I went vegetarian, it was like 5 serves of vegetables, because you can't really eat much else. And so when I was getting used to cooking vegetarian diet, vegetables obviously made up majority of what was on my plate. And man, I just remember being like, oh, I feel so good. Like, I feel so good. How incredible. What have I been missing out on all of these years? And once you feel so good after eating vegetables, it's very hard to go back. Like now I feel, if I don't eat enough veggies, like over Christmas, we were traveling and, staying with different my boyfriend's family members and stuff. And, not everyone has this love affair with vegetables. So if there's not veggies served up, with every meal, it doesn't feel right to me anymore. I feel like, oh, where are the vegetables?
Isn't that cool? Like when you actually have the experience where you feel better, it's such
Yes.
easy motivation to keep going. I mean, I've been at holiday gatherings and people will be like, so is all you're eating that salad? Like they should be concerned. I'm like, compared to what I have to choose from, yes,
Right.
this is what I'm going to have right now. And,
Exactly.
and it seems like it should be strange. Like, why do you like eating those things? But once there's like a shifting point, and you probably had this experience too, where it's like, I can't not have this food that makes me feel good because I feel good.
Totally. I completely agree. And again, I think that's also what makes it easy. So like, oh, it's so hard to like stick to, eating lots of vegetables. But once you start and it becomes a habit, you can't live without them, because you feel so good when you eat them that when you don't eat them, you notice straight away like, oh, I don't feel so energized. I don't feel so healthy. I don't feel so, I don't know, light or whatever it is, the good feeling that you get from eating healthy. That almost in a way becomes an addiction, like, where are the vegetables? Otherwise I'm not going to feel good,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
We talked about where we live in the Midwest here. We call ourselves kind of the meat and potatoes, or the bread basket also, of the country. And so many of us were raised on roasts and potatoes and, every meal. And so I find that there's like this dynamic too, like this happened to me today. I have to bring it up. It's that I do eat meat, but I really side for eating a large amount of vegetables in the day. But I noticed today that I was like, I should have some meat, but it was that should voice. If I tuned into my body was like, no, you don't need meat today, even though I have a workout planned for later that my mind might say, you should have this. Mm-hmm. But my body, for some reason, was craving a lot of vegetables, like it's doing an early cleanse. Like it's almost feels like springtime almost. Mm-hmm. As my body is saying, no, you should have celery sticks and this soup or celery with almond butter. So it has, all those healthy fats. Mm-hmm. And it's funny how our mind can play tricks on us, especially those shoulds.
Totally. I think that's like a big one too, with the habits that you develop. Like you were saying, everyone is so used to eating a diet of, meat and potatoes. And just the same way, like if you grew up in a family where every day after dinner you had dessert, it's like something's missing if you're not ending that meal with that sweet taste. So yeah, it is interesting how habits and our mind is so powerful to really our mind is so powerful and is enough to persuade us that we need something, when really our body's like, no, you don't. Like, you don't really need to have sugar after a meal, but your mind and the habits that you've developed will tell you otherwise.
So I'm curious, well, first of all, I do remember from our previous talk, you said mm-hmm. that when the doctors had recommended these birth control pills to subside your PCOS symptoms, you gained quite a bit of weight, didn't you?
I did, yes. 10 kilos, which I think we worked out was about 20 pounds roughly. So yeah, and again, I was only on the pills for 3 months. So that was 20 pounds in 3 months. So that's a lot. It was a lot. And all of a sudden waking up, especially as a, teenage girl, waking up, or for anyone really, but waking up and not being able to get into your clothes, wondering why your stomach looks, because, I thought it was weight, but really it was just water and bloatedness. And I didn't really realize that at the time. And I remember my stomach, like it looked like I was pregnant. And I just thought, oh my God, I've become so fat, like I just can't get into any of my clothes. And yeah, it just really wasn't a nice feeling. And when I was sort of saying that the doctor kind of dismissed a lot of the side effects, that was really one of them. I kept trying to tell her, like, look, I've gained all this weight. Like, why is this happening? And she just kind of brushed me aside like I was some teenage girl, paranoid about her weight, when really it was like, look, this has only happened in the last 3 months. And I just didn't feel like she was taking me seriously.
And what happened when you changed your diet? Well, you went off the birth control first, I'm assuming?
Yes. So went off the birth control, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
then that's when I went down the natural medicine path, and I started, and that was also a big motivator to start switching my diet, because obviously I thought, again, it was like I'd gained all this fat, right? So I thought, okay, yes, diet, that's going to be the first. That was my number one kind of aim, was to tackle the weight, again, from an ego point of view. Like, it wasn't so much about the healing. I was like, no, I just want to fit back in my clothes, and then that's kind of started this snowball. And eventually when I went to see these holistic doctors, a lot of them were like, no, this is not fat, like you've just gained water weight. And having and being able to explain why that happened and how that happened and what I can do to fix it, rather than just being brushed off, just felt very reassuring.
For sure. Did you find that you felt normal, or how long did it take to feel, quote, normal again, or even healed or better?
I would say I really struggled with my health that year that I was diagnosed, in the 3 months of the pill. I would probably say for a year, I felt all over the place, from going on the pill, which was only really 3 or 4 months, and then going into this natural medicine field, even though I felt better and I felt more hopeful about everything, I still felt off in my body, and I felt sort of out of balance for a good year, I would say. It wasn't, I would say a good year. I was feeling all over the place.
Was that just kind of a learning curve period of finding out what was going to work for your body?
Totally. I think so much was going on that year too, emotionally, mentally, and then physically. Around that time of my life, I also had what I call my spiritual awakening, when I kind of came into understanding my spiritual self. Coincidentally, that year is when I also started pursuing acting seriously. Like, I was going to classes, and I was meeting with managers, agents, casting directors back in Australia. So a lot was happening for me in that year. It was like a complete transformative time of my life. So that probably had a lot to do with how I was feeling as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of changes, like a coming of age.
Yes.
Period.
Totally. Yes.
So when did you start feeling more normal? When did things come under control, so to speak?
I would say probably, so that first year was all over the place. And then after that, things started to get smoother. I would say it probably took, to be completely healed, or what I feel is completely healed, that took about 5 years of 5 years of diet, again, meditation, and adding like metaphysical, mindful stuff in there, along with all the herbs. It was 5 years really to get the blood work back and it all to be completely normal, periods normal. That took about 5 years. But I would say probably at the 2-year mark after being diagnosed, I started to really, really feel better about my body, myself. I might not have been getting my period all the time, but I still was, on the path of wellness, I felt. But yeah, I would say completely healed to the point where the blood work came back perfect. It was at least 5 years, I would say.
And that can, to someone who is used to just a doctor saying, just take the pill and that will subside your symptoms or whatever the intention is, 5 years can seem like a long time, but it's such a journey. And I try not to go off on too many tangents, trying to keep it cohesive to the wellness aspect there. But there are so many aspects, like at least for me too, I learned so much, not only about my body, but it's like it's a tool. Your body is a tool that you learn with. And so I hear that diet was like probably the biggest thing. Herbs, which, at different times in my experience can have different effects. Some can work better. Or were there any other things that were like, this helped?
Definitely for me was the emotional healing, the emotional health, looking at my emotions and looking at how to calm myself and my anxieties. And I have a very overactive mind, and I was just running my life, and it was causing me to feel very anxious, very negative, a lot of, self-deprecating thinking that looking back now, I go, oh, no wonder I was sick. I was thinking such horrible things about myself, And so for me, I believe that food, definitely the diet was such a big one, but right next to that was my emotional and sort of spiritual healing. And actually, and we were talking about this very briefly last time too, part of what activated that for me was flower essences. And I know that you also enjoy working with them. And I remember when they were first introduced to me, I thought, flower essences, like, okay, like this is really out there. Like herbs I can understand and acupuncture, but flower essences, okay, fine. And I remember I had these very repetitive thoughts. And so the naturopath said, okay, try these flower essences. It's going to help with the calming those repetitive thoughts. So I was like, okay, fine. So I tried it, very skeptical. I wasn't going into this, thinking it was even going to work. And, honestly, when I had my next consult, I'll never forget, she said to me, oh, so you had all those repetitive thoughts. And I was like, oh my God, I completely forgot about them, and I literally hadn't remembered until she asked me. And I was like, oh my God, these flower essences are amazing. So I just was hooked after that. And, I might not use herbs all that often, but flower essences, I'm a huge fan of them.
Yeah, I am too, as you saw in my cabinet.
Yes.
And I can definitely attest. I have one experience I still have experiences where I feel them working.
Mm-hmm.
My first experience, if I may share as well, because it's so, they're amazing. Like, okay, so for people who don't know what flower essences are, this is how I like to explain them. So we know that if someone gives you daisies, it symbolizes a certain thing, as opposed to roses or even a different color of rose. They have different meanings. And it's the same thing with the flower essences. The way that they're made is the flowers are, in the best practices, they're raised biodynamically, they're cultivated at just the right time, and they're soaked in spring water at just the right time of day, just for the right amount of time. And the water is meant to absorb the essence of the flower. So if it's a daisy, it's that spring-like fresh feeling. Each flower has a different sentiment to it. And then they're preserved in alcohol, and it's the concept of homeopathy, that like cures like. And so if you need a little bit more sunshine in your life, you might take the sunflower essence. And just like any herb and herbal practices, we have certain herbs that are our signature, like they're our soulmate as far as plants go. And one of mine in flower essences is called agrimony. And without getting too specific, without doing a whole herbal lesson here, agrimony helps those who have repetitive thoughts and who stuff feelings. So I would say absolutely my healing also similarly happened a great deal when I was able to address things emotionally. The challenge was I didn't know that I was experiencing these emotional things. And so it helps to bring out those things. Now, it's so funny is because I told a friend that I was taking this agrimony, and I said, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. I can't help but talk about certain things. Like they just come out, and I start crying and I start expressing myself. And she's like, oh my God, keep that away from me. And what's amazing is that it helps where you need it, but it doesn't help if you don't. So if a person is normally good at letting out their feelings and talking about the feelings, the agrimony won't necessarily push those things out. Mm-hmm. Because I had stuffed them for so long, it helped me through that. And I still take it at least a couple times a year. Like people do cleanses, I kind of do those kinds of cleanses with herbs. So there's many, many, many kinds of flower essences that can do different things. So I can absolutely relate. So glad that we're getting a second chance at this, because I think we're getting a lot more good content. Do you remember the flower essence that she recommended?
Oh my gosh. No, I really don't. One thing I do know is that this was back in Australia. So they were Australian bush flowers that I have not been able to find now living in LA. But No, I don't remember them. I remember too, I tried a couple of different ones, but I can't remember what that first one was. I wish I did. I don't.
What's so interesting is even using the native plants, that we do tend to respond better to the plants. Like I don't respond as well to Chinese herbs, but definitely the northern US herbs, or the old world herbs that they call them, work better. And it's so funny, even the names, you're like, oh, of course, that's sunflower is what I need.
Yeah.
Like that. It's really fascinating.
Yeah.
So in addressing the emotional aspect, so diet, emotional, were those the main things, or anything else that really made a difference?
No, I would say it was those two. It was the diet, and then emotional, kind of also they're connected with spiritual. Also, I think a little bit physical too, but then I think that was a product of the emotions. And when I say physical, I mean exercise. I started at that time to exercising regularly. I was a dancer, but I started doing Pilates and doing more not that dancing's not cardio, but I really started getting into it more and making sure that I was religiously, exercising a couple of times a week. But I think personally that desire to do that stemmed from the emotional healing of confidence, because I had very low self-esteem. And, even though I was acting, which doesn't probably make sense, but I felt like the more confidence I had, the more able I was to kind of get up and get out there and pursue these things that I really, really enjoyed doing. So I think it was the emotional healing around the confidence that allowed me to then exercise and do all that other kind of stuff.
What's interesting, especially when we follow our guidance, like you follow guidance to get into acting, you pushed yourself out there to at least act like you're right? Or doing Pilates, which focuses on the core, which is the power center, which would be a confidence boosting. Like I know when I do Pilates, I'm like, bring it on. Attitude.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree with you. Like I know yoga is definitely has the reputation of being a more spiritual practice, but and I love yoga, don't get me wrong, but there's something with me and my body and Pilates. I just feel like it kind of puts me in alignment, And so, yes. And I think it is because it's so heavily centered around that core, that stomach area. And also for me, a lot of my emotions, I have come to realize and understand that I hold them in my gut. I hold them in my stomach, my digestive system, my, reproductive area. Like that's a popular area for my, emotions and energy to stagnate. So I think because Pilates is so focused on that part of the body, it just really resonates with me.
Well, and similar to yoga, Pilates focuses on the breath work with the movement. It's funny. So you say you love Pilates and you do like yoga too. It's like living in LA. Doesn't everybody have a yoga card or something?
Yeah, that's probably true.
So getting into more of the metaphysical or spiritual aspect of healing, when did that start connecting? You have mentioned meditation. Where is that connection for you?
I definitely think being diagnosed was definitely kind of the first step on that journey. But I also feel it was starting to access my emotions and realize how powerful my thoughts were and how they were contributing to, firstly, the sickness of my body, but also stopping me from doing things that I wanted to do, like, the low self-esteem, the confidence, all of that. I think when I started to become savvy or clear about my emotions and actually started paying attention to them, I think the next step was understanding who I am and what those thoughts are in my head and where did they come from and why do I feel the way I feel and how come when I hang around this person I start noticing things. Or I also, as an intuitive growing up, I would hear a lot of things like voices and different things talking to me, and I felt honestly like I felt like I was crazy. And probably anyone, who is not open to that kind of thing would probably be like, it sounds like you are. So, I just felt very like an alien, And so coming into understanding my emotions and being more self-accepting of myself. Also books, I would say. I started reading a lot of like self-help books. I think I started reading like Wayne Dyer and a lot of the, I don't know if you've heard of the publishing company, the Hay House Publishing Company. I just started reading and I was like, oh my God, I'm not alone. Like there are these people, these forward-thinking people who are having similar experiences or sharing similar experiences and talking about how you can heal your body and get a grip on your emotions and how emotions do contribute to disease. And even as well, seeing the holistic doctors that I was seeing, mind, body, spirit, they were the ones that were kind of telling me like, you have a lot of emotions and you've got to learn how to manage them better. And that was never a topic of conversation that, we would have at the dinner table or that the regular doctor, it just, you don't get a lesson in learning how to love yourself or tame your emotions. It's just, you have to kind of just figure it out on your own. And so I think going down that journey is kind of what got me into this idea that body, mind, spirit, emotions, feelings, everything, it's all connected. You can't heal one part and not heal the other. You have to look at all of it in order to be truly healed.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like books were a big part of it. We talked about flower essences, which I didn't mean to scare anybody by my story. Flower essences, they can actually, in my experience, help you to see the emotional, what's underlying, without being traumatic. They're very gentle in that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Were there any other tools that really helped you to either discover those things or work through them?
I think that was kind of it, unless I'm forgetting something. It really was, I think, the personal inward journey and then the books. And then also, I think, following what started to feel good, like, oh, it feels good to do Pilates. I'm going to do that. And I remember this particular Pilates class that I found, and I thought this was normal, but it's not. So I just find it really funny that this is the first Pilates class that I ever went to, ended in meditation. Now, I had never meditated before, but we'd do the workout and then the teacher would take us through a guided meditation. And I remember doing this meditation and just having this very profound feeling washing over me of, I never want to hurt you again. And it was kind of like me telling that to my own body, like I never want to do anything that's going to hurt you, like very like body is my temple kind of moment. And so I also think meditation was also a tool in my journey, but I don't want to make it sound like I was sitting and meditating every day, because I really wasn't. It was like once a week in this Pilates class, but that was enough to start to develop this like inner connection. And then later on, many years later on, I started doing meditation classes and then practicing meditation. But in the beginning, it was just literally once a week for this 10-minute guided meditation that was enough to kind of kickstart that relationship with that inner self. So maybe meditation in there is another one.
Yeah, I can personally agree too. Like when we were saying hi again before this recording, we were both like, oh, it's busy, but really good. We're doing, both.
Yeah.
I can attest that meditation helps immensely with, for me, a busy schedule, keeping an even keel. Mm-hmm. I also admit, and I have to put this in there because I know for a long time for me too, it was like, yeah, but I can't sit still. My mind just goes, and how do I do that? How do I fit it in? And it's like, when it's time, it happens. I mean, there's so many ways to meditate. It's not just about sitting down. There are different forms of meditation. Mm-hmm. I don't have a question with that other than maybe, do you agree? Did that kind of happen for you too?
No, I totally agree. I completely agree. Like I've done lots of different forms of meditation, from doing, the guided meditation, which is probably one of my favorites, to also doing it just listening to the breath, also doing it, being in complete silence, no thoughts, trying to do it in that way. and also too, and I think exactly to your point, is that there are different ways to meditate. So meditation for somebody could be painting or gardening or I don't know, doing something with your hands. Basically anything that allows you to lose track of time, where you're quiet and still and you're just kind of focused on one thing, whether it's your breath, whether it's the needles as you're knitting, whether it's the, little plants as you're weeding or planting or whatever it is, or artwork, and whether you're painting. There are different ways that you can sort of meditate. And integrate it into your life. It doesn't have to be, okay, I'm sitting in lotus position and chanting Om, it doesn't have to be that way. Although that meditation is very effective, there are other alternatives that you can try.
Yeah, or you're sitting and thinking, am I saying Om correctly, or am I at the right pitch?
Yeah, exactly.
Or what if I'm not in tune? Will that
I know, right? So yeah, I think that there are a lot of these ancient practices that are, have, again, meditation has been studied also by Western medicine. This is not just something that's, airy-fairy, like that has no scientific backing. Meditation has been proven to reduce inflammation, reduce stress, and all of these things. And we can take these ancient ritualistic practices and then kind of jazz them up for the modern lifestyle. So, if your meditation is even just, while you're showering, and that's kind of an easy one that I tell people, when you're in the shower, just take a minute to imagine, this is kind of a meditation and a cleansing. Imagine the water, cleansing off any negative energies or cleansing off any stressful emotions. And then with the soap, imagine the soap kind of restoring and charging up your aura for the day ahead. Close your eyes and just take a minute to feel the hot water on the back of your neck. So many different things that you can do just in your regular daily schedule, which I really feel is the art form and how you can integrate these spiritual practices into your life, rather than like, oh, I'm so calm when I'm meditating, but then I get to work and it all goes out the window. You can bring little bits throughout the day. It's going to help.
Yeah, that's a great tip.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. I know. Yeah, definitely the shower or bath they're like a cocoon in a way, where it can shed and regenerate.
Totally. Well, water is so healing, so it kind of makes sense that, a lot of people say, oh, I have like my best ideas in the shower, which I do as well. Mm-hmm. But it's because water is so healing, and they say hot water or warm water on the back of the neck activates your creativity. It activates your chakras, those energy centers within you, and it gives you these good ideas. It makes you relax. It makes you feel, vibrant and ready for the day ahead. So perfect time to make the most of that energy and put some conscious effort or conscious intention into a positive thought for the day, or, something to kind of fill you up and get excited about before you head out the door.
Definitely. So you mentioned the chakras, which are energy centers in the body, correlated back to Ayurvedic medicine or the East Indian traditions. And through this podcast, I'm not asking anyone to necessarily believe in these things, but just explore. And that's part of this conversation, where these energy centers happen to correspond, or the primary ones at least. We have hundreds of them around our body, if not thousands, perhaps. But we have primary ones that actually correlate with the endocrine system of the body. And what I'm relating this to is that you have an article on your site, How to Heal Your Body Using Astrology, which actually relate to these similar centers of the body. And I'm wondering if you could share a little bit of that with us, an idea of, okay, so astrology, we all are familiar at least with our sun sign. I'm a Scorpio, for example. Mm-hmm. So how the heck does that relate to our body?
Mm-hmm. Good question. So it's believed that the different planets, so the different planets rule over different constellations. So your Scorpio, your ruling planet will be Pluto. I'm a Capricorn, my ruling planet will be Saturn. So it said that Capricorn energy, for example, also rules over things like the bones, your teeth, and the knees. Scorpio energy, which is ruled by Pluto, rules over the reproductive organs. So if you can imagine the body and then the astrological wheel, Aries, which is the first sign, rules the top of the head and, starting at the body, and then Pisces, which is the last sign, rules the bottom of the feet. Now, how can this be, right? How can it be that bodies are, linked to the planets? Well, it kind of, I don't know how deep we want to go, but it kind of gets into the idea that we are all connected. We're all matter. We're all the same matter vibrating at different frequencies. And so we are all connected and coming from the same place. If you think about the moon, right, what effect does the moon have on the body? Well, we all know that the moon can affect the tides, right? And what's our body made out of? Predominantly water. So if the moon can affect an entire ocean, what effect is it having on the water in our own body, or the energy in our own body? So if you think of it in that way, it kind of makes sense that a full moon or a new moon is going to have some energetic imprint on us. And I think we've all heard, people going crazy on the full moon, or even the word lunatic, right? Lunar. It's from the word lunar. And so in the same way, all the planets are sort of having their energetic imprint on us in different ways. And so if you are, for example, a Virgo energy rules the digestive system. So someone with strong Virgo in their chart, so you might be born a Virgo, but then there also might be cases where you have strong Virgo depending on when you were born, might maybe hold a lot of energy, or maybe are extra sensitive or even extra strong in a certain part of their body. So the digestive system, for example, or, Cancer, the heart area, the lung area. It could very well be that a Cancer holds a lot of energy, or is more prone to having heart issues or breathing issues. Again, it doesn't necessarily mean that just because you're a Cancer, you're going to have heart problems, but it could provide a clue as to what part of your body is sensitive or prone to. I mean, we all have a part in our body that is usually weak, and when we're sick or when our immunity is low, that part of our body usually acts up. Like, for example, earlier I mentioned my digestive system. I'm a Capricorn, like I said, but my moon is in Virgo. And it kind of made sense to me when I saw that. I was like, yeah, because your moon represents emotions, right? And I always feel emotionally like I'm storing a lot of energy in that part of my body. So it's not necessarily the only tool you can use, but it's kind of a guiding complementary tool that you can use to see where in your body you may be stronger or weaker, and where you maybe hold a lot of energy. So in that way, I think it can be helpful.
Yeah, I can definitely affirm that for me, being a Scorpio, the reproductive area also related to the second chakra, and the chakra system being the creative center. Mm-hmm. Those are things I've had to work on in my life. I've had to regulate my cycles and improve the quality of my cycles, which I think is becoming more and more understood, that our cycles are so representative of actually how we're doing overall, physically, emotionally, mentally, but even creativity wise, like I have to keep going. Like I can get stagnant in creativity, that second chakra area. So it's amazing how these things correlate, or even in our language, like I feel sick to my stomach, like why do we feel sick to our stomach at times? Are we feeling threatened by a situation? Or like the last time I forgot to press record, I had this sick feeling in my stomach, and it was, I felt like I had momentum with our talk, and like the bottom fell out. It was like, oh, that doesn't feel good. And then my ears got hot because I was embarrassed too. And it's interesting. And those are not really the best examples of how we have this in our language, but we really do, or butterflies in my stomach, or
totally, yeah.
All those.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, when you were saying that, I mean, I think we can all relate to that feeling of that dropping feeling that we have in our stomach, or even butterflies, and where does that come from? That I do believe, like you were saying, that is an energy center being activated in our body.
Or cold feet, for example, or our foundation, or do we not feel comfortable moving in a significant area in life, like getting married is usually where that comes up, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And the feet is actually Pisces, and Pisces is the intuitive, very creative but very intuitive sign. There might not be any facts that you necessarily shouldn't marry this person or shouldn't do this thing, but intuitively something inside of you might be saying, you know what, something doesn't add up here, or something's not right. You might need to look at something. And again, that cold feet feeling. So it's sort of interesting how this language has developed, and it kind of correlates to the chakras and to astrology and to even, Chinese medicine, where they have the meridians, and it's kind of all very interlinked, even though they're different cultures.
Yeah, well, that's what's really amazing. I teach about body typing, which gets into Ayurveda and the doshas, the Chinese medicine elements, although I simplify it for our culture, just using the 4 elements, earth, fire, air, and water, because the doshas names and the elements can be really confusing. And I get people asking all the time, so does this relate to my astrology chart? And I say, yeah, if you have a dominance of a certain element among your signs, that will show up. Or even like, while someone might be a Leo, a typical fire sign, but they're not, if they don't show a lot of fire, they probably have a lot of water somewhere else. And it's it sounds almost archaic, it is, there thousands of year old traditions and studies, but there's wisdom in it, which I think is so amazing. If we just, we don't have to full on believe it, but just like ponder.
Totally. And I think you take what feels right and good to you. And it's exactly like you said, we don't necessarily have to believe in it 100% or even, follow it, but just sort of allowing room to open your mind to it, not even understand it, just allowing room to open your mind to it. And you might be surprised what you discover.
Yeah, if you're constantly having heartburn and an overabundance of heat or whichever astrological sign that relates to, you can at least put pieces of the puzzle together. You have really interesting articles on your website, which we don't have time to get into all of them, but I want to mention a few of them because I think they'd be interesting to this audience. One of them is a spiritual guide to weight loss, and it covers a number of points, but one of them, if you might just briefly cover, is an energetic perspective on fat. And I think this is important because I've struggled with weight. It's so easy to get stuck in the I'm carrying this weight. It's a physical thing. But you present a very interesting idea or concept of that it may not actually, first of all, be a curse. It actually may be serving you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, firstly, fat is protective, and also fat is able to store things, right? We store, like fat-soluble vitamins, for example. Like lots of different things can be stored in fat tissue. And even in the ancient times in alchemy, and probably even in certain holistic medicine fields, oils and fat can hold nutrition and minerals. So fat is used a lot in remedies and in alchemy for that very purpose, to manifest things in manifestation rituals. So somebody who maybe is holding a lot of fat on their body, or feels like they're holding a lot of fat in their body, it could very well be, it depends on what's going on, but there could very well be an emotional or metaphysical component to it, of maybe the need to protect themselves, or maybe stored energy, hopes, dreams, and wishes that they haven't been able to release out into the world. So fat is energy, is sort of about creating this dialogue of looking at fat or any sort of illness or disease that comes through our body in a different way, and trying to see, okay, well, what's the metaphysical reason behind this? Because I do believe that there is always one.
And it's interesting, we don't have time to go into all these things. Actually, that's the point of Weight for Your Wellness podcast, is to present these subjects, and you can start putting the pieces together for yourself, and or consult someone like you or our practitioners that come on. But it does start relating. You start seeing these puzzle pieces come together. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, exactly. And, I speak to many people who work in the health and fitness space, and maybe even you've seen this, that somebody who is struggling with their weight, for example, you go back and you look at their history, and always there's some emotional disturbance or emotional upset or emotional trigger that starts around the time they start gaining weight. And I have a friend of mine who is a fitness coach, and she helps people, achieve their weight loss goals and all of that. And she says that I feel like a therapist, and she has also said that the minute the person gets to the crux of the emotion behind their weight gain, the weight drops off. She's like, I could try every exercise, every diet, but until they start to open up and have that dialogue about what's really going on an emotional level, she's like, it's almost like the weight starts dropping off instantly. And I think that that's somewhat true too for all types of, dis-ease or illnesses that come into the body, not just, weight gain.
Well, we both had that experience talking about the emotional component, for sure. And it shows up in different ways, whether it seems external or it's just internal. I'd like to wrap up by quoting you and then sharing some things that you have coming up. But I do encourage, if people are finding any of this interesting, to visit your website and visit your materials too, the books that you have available. And I can't wait to hear about and read the one that you have coming out.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Yes, please let us know. So I'm going to quote you here. This is one I pulled out that I thought was really, really appropriate. So there are many things that you can do to activate your own self-healing ability, but the number one task of disease is to learn how to love yourself. And that might seem like a lot to chew on for an ending comment, and you can certainly end with some closing statements if you'd like. Closing statements, it sounds like we're in a courtroom or something. I meant a message or something like that. There's a lot to gain. This absolutely, the metaphysical, the bridging the gap between the emotions and the body as well, is not to be overlooked in the healing journey. I think this conversation has been wonderful that we've had. I really look forward to learning more and reading more of what you have coming out. Tell us where people can reach you and some things that you have coming up.
Sure. So you can check out all the articles that you've been talking about on foreverconscious.com. I also have Facebook and Instagram and a Twitter, but I mainly Facebook and Instagram are the two places that I update the most regularly. And then I also have a retreat that I'm hosting in March in Los Angeles. So if you're in the area or you want to make the journey out, it's a 2-day intensive retreat where we look at all things relating to mind, body, spirit, but specifically intuition, heart chakra, heart opening, the heart energy center, and expanding on your ability to trust and listen to your intuition. And like we've kind of been talking, get in touch with that inner self, that inner voice that you can use to guide you. So that'll be the focus of the retreat. There's a lot of other things in there. We do some making your own essences with crystals and herbs and flowers. And also I have a shaman, a dear friend of mine who is a shaman, who will be coming and facilitating what's called a despacho ceremony, which is an ancient Peruvian ceremony geared to helping release and heal the body. So lots of cool things. You can also check out more information about that on foreverconscious.com. Wonderful. That sounds really fun. Yeah, I'm sure it'll be good. It sounds really cool. So do you have any closing statements or thoughts? I should not say statements. That sounds so
Sure.
Well, I think going back to your comment about the, disease being that overall message of love, and I think that is so true, that when you can love yourself, everything else kind of falls into place. And this is not just from a health perspective, it's also just your whole life in general. Because when you love yourself, you stop putting yourself second. You stop doing things that no longer want to do. You start looking at those emotions that are making you feel bad, and you start putting shifts and changes, kind of like what I was saying about, being in that guided meditation and having that moment of like, I never want to hurt you ever again. And that is what makes it so easy and simple to go through on a healing journey. When you genuinely have that feeling, when you genuinely love yourself, it's just so easy, because it's just the only natural thing to do is to look after yourself. When imagine if you have a kid, right? And you love your kid, you just want to do the best things for it, you feed it the best food, you want to make sure it has everything. In a way, it's kind of like the same thing, except you're doing it for yourself. So I definitely think that self-love is sort of the all-encompassing answer to a lot of struggles that we face. And look, it's not easy to shift into that line of thinking, but it is definitely possible. And you just, small steps every day into loving yourself more and more.
For sure. I totally agree. I'm so glad actually that we had a second chance to do this. This has been wonderful.
Yes.
I really look forward to hearing about your updates and what's going on with your new book. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Wonderful evening. And for those who are listening, thank you for joining. And we have so many more amazing guests coming up. And I'm working more and more to get you tuned into who's coming up, so you can ask questions ahead of time and even do some live events. So to be notified of that, follow us also on Facebook. Instagram is a great way to definitely in that realm as well. And even joining the Weight Free Wellness newsletter. I don't blast a whole lot of newsletters, but it's a good way to hear what's coming up, what has happened, and just keeping up to date. And have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.